Hi, I'm Nalini Haynes. This is Dark Matter. Today I'm talking to Kelley Grant, whose debut novel, Desert Rising, is out in an electronic first version this month and in paper copy next month. Welcome, Kelley.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
What can you tell us about your novel?
I'm spectacularly bad at describing my novel, but it has these wonderful giant cats. And people pair with these giant cats to become a part of this amazing temple system where you have these capricious deities and just political intrigue. And one of those pledges is Sulis, who comes out of the desert from a very different system of religion. And she's there to make changes, to kind of try to explode the system. She also has a twin, Kadar, who stays out in the city of Ilion, and he falls in love with a woman of the Forsaken caste. So we've got a little bit of forbidden love going there as well. But my publicist says I'm supposed to emphasize great, big, wonderful cats.
Well, this is the internet and cats are a thing,
Yes.
especially for those of us who live under the poor, like myself. Okay, so what can you tell us about the cats? And I hear you have cats that may have influenced the characters.
I have five cats. I am very much under the paw or under the claw occasionally as well. But the main character, I call him the main character, but the companion to the main character, Jin, he's actually based on a cat that I had at the time. It was really about 8 years ago that I wrote the book, and it took me a while, of course, to get it published, but Chester was the cat that Jin was based on, and he was a character. He was one of those cats that owned you, and he showed how much he owned you. There's little things that I put into Jin where, the little head bumps right under the chin. That was pure Chester. He would lay on me like he owned me. And anybody who came in the house, he claimed. Or he didn't, and they bled. So, and anybody who visited, once he knew them, he would immediately go over to them and claim them again. So it just depended. If he hated you forever. If he loved you, you were his pledge. He claimed you. So that was Chester. He passed away about 3 years ago. And I was pretty devastated. He was 19, so he was a good old age. But when I reread it, when Harper contacted me about it, I reread it just one more time. And I actually was teary-eyed just remembering Chester and thinking, oh my gosh, it's Chester. He lives on.
He really does, and he's a very very convincing cat. I've known a number of strong, dominating personalities in furry form. Um, so, but probably a slightly deeper question is these companion animals are a little bit like Anne McCaffrey's dragons in Pern, except your feline channel deities. Why did you go down that path?
Um, I wanted it to be not quite like that. I want the cats to be cats. Dragons are kind of human as well as being dragon. But my cats are just cats. They're capricious, they're choosy, they're picky, they drag in live chickens and kill them in front of the, temple maidens who hate that. So I did go down that path. I love that kind of companionship because I have that, with my cats. They're laying on me when I'm reading. But I wanted them to be cats. I love Mercedes Lackey, the Heralds of Valdemar. Those companions are so wonderful. But again, they're humans in horse form. And, I really love cats. So I wanted my cats to be actual large, wonderful cats who claim you just as cats do. But I wanted that companionship, that interaction that said, okay, we are made for these creatures as much as they are made for us. So that was kind of where I went with that.
And you really did say that humans were made for these creatures in the mythology of the world.
Yes. I wanted to get away from a human-centered world. So much of our religions in this world are all about how we were created in the image of God. Well, in this world, humans were created because the cats were bored, so they needed a companion. And the cats are beloved of the one being who is out there. And then the humans were so troublesome that the deities were created out of the humans so that they could just take care of those humans, and the one could just be anywhere she needed to be, because of course the one is not created in our image, so it is truly other. We don't know what form she is. So
And
that's kind of what I enjoyed that non-human centered religion.
so you've developed a complex religious system. I was particularly impressed because quite often in science fiction and fantasy, religion is it's a faith, and at best it's ambiguous of whether or not these gods actually exist. But your gods, there's one scene in particular where there's absolutely no doubt that the deities exist. So why did you go down that way, that path? And just generally, tell us more about the religion, because there's a whole you've presented the whole gamut. You've got the devout through to the absolutely corrupt. It's a really rich, diverse religious system.
That may have come from my childhood a little bit. I was raised in Amish country, and the Amish are Anabaptists who don't believe in cars, electricity. They believe in going on their own and staying almost medieval time. But also, I have, I think, four United Methodist ministers in my family. So I saw the way Christianity divided. And then one of my best friends in childhood was Quaker. So I had all these diversities in Christianity. And you can see so much. You can see the corruption of a church. You can see the purity of a church. You can see how simple it can be. You can see how complex it can be. And I wanted my system to be like that. It depends on who you are inside, how you take the religion and how you use the religion. And I wanted my religion to be just as full and just as mythological and just as interesting. So that's kind of where that came from, that very diverse background of different Christianities. And of course, now I would probably say that I am more Buddhist and a yogini rather than a Christian, just to make another choice out there. So I am always fascinated with the different religions that are around and the different I call it mythologies, but the different legends that go with those religions.
Yes, I want to get into the yogini bit later. I actually didn't know that that was a word, but I love the word. But let's focus more on the book for the time being, because you have the Forsaken, which is like an untouchable caste, but it is not a caste necessarily by birth. So where did they come from?
There's always in every religion, it feels like to me, people who aren't quite as accepted and who go to the church and people think, oh, well, they're not good enough for this, or they're, not quite what I want. And I kind of took that and made it an actual caste where people could actually throw them out, where the deities could say, I don't like them. I'm kind of corrupt. I don't like these people, or I want their stuff. And so I allow that to be a caste. It's a little different than the Hindu caste in that you can be thrown out of the regular religion to become a part of that. But I was just fascinated with the interactions between forsaken people who aren't supposed to be. They're outside of God's love or the deity's love, and yet they're people, they're human, they're loving, they love each other. And I wanted to explore that kind of pain and that kind of how do you gain acceptance of yourself, and how can other people gain acceptance of you, even when this has happened to you.
And there's a whole slew of consequences from being outcast, like to being converted or cast out to become forsaken.
Yes, well, you don't get the ability to defend yourselves. If there's a crime committed, you are out. You're completely out of luck. And crimes can be committed. If you're thought of nothing more than a rat, then people will treat you that way. And
Sorry, it's the cat tail that got me.
we gotta do this,
Oh,
man.
she's so
My
beautiful.
friendly kitty. Yes, so you can see I am, and but even the cats like the Forsaken, I'd like to say. So, um, as I was saying, what was I saying before the cat once again interrupted? Uh, just I would think it's a terrifying thing to have no recourse, to have nobody looking out for you, for the police who are supposed to protect you to just ignore it. And I think we've seen that a little bit in the US, just to have a certain sect that is not being protected the way it should. I wanted to explore that a little bit because it's not fair. And I like to get a little fairness. I like my heroic fantasy where things come out okay in the end a little bit, even though I don't always write that way.
And these things, these issues, they're ongoing, and it seems that you just have to have a certain color of skin, and you're vulnerable.
It's, of
And the
course,
first,
these have happened after I wrote this.
mm,
It's an ongoing thing in
mm,
every nation, in every, I mean, you look at the Jewish Holocaust, you
mm,
look at, any kind of time where you have a people who are looked down upon just
mm-hmm,
because they are who they are, dehumanizing.
mm,
And to me, that's just completely abhorrent. We are all, it's the Buddhist philosophy. We are all one. We are all the same. We are all connected by a light within ourselves.
mm.
And when you disregard that, that's just evil. So I kind of wanted to explore that a little bit. Obviously, I'm passionate about that.
Oh,
So
yes, yes, yes. Um, and one of the things you've done with the Forsaken is you've made them visually different. Because, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, a Jew, and I've heard some people with Jewish heritage who are really quite passionate about how they look different. But to me, they just look like people. They don't look to me like, I can't look at them and say, oh, that's a Jew. Um, to me, they just look like people. I mean, I wasn't even aware that Obama was black until people started carrying on about it while he was running for. And then I looked at him and thought, oh, yeah, I suppose. Um, but people are people. But you've made the Forsaken visually different so that the people who want to treat them differently have permission.
yes, if they take off their brown cloaks, they're still the same.
Mm,
But it does. I think that's a big deal is people seeing a different color, a different race, and sorry, my cat is bumping me, and uh, and just feeling like they have the right because there's some weird little difference there to
mm,
treat them horribly. And so having that little bit of visual marker is very similar to real life where we just take one little thing.
mm,
And I wanted it also to be interesting that they are considered evil and thrown out, and yet the Desert Clan, who is chocolate colored, they are black. They're accepted a little more.
mm.
So you have kind of a little dichotomy there. They're still looked upon with suspicion, but yet, Sulis is accepted among her class. Whereas Farah, who is white, is not accepted. So
Mm.
it's about a religious difference here instead of a visual color difference.
So, what inspired you to actually start writing?
I've always liked to tell stories. I didn't really write them down until like school assignments in junior high and that, but I had a whole cast of teddy bears and everything else when I was growing up, and we had all sorts of heroic tales going on. I had more Barbie dolls than anybody else, I think. I think my mom counted 26 when she finally gave them all away because they all had different parts they had to play. I didn't care what color they were. I didn't care what hair they had. I just needed bodies for my stories. And they all had parts and they all had personalities and things like that. And what got addictive was when I wrote it down and gave it to teachers and they liked it. That was kind of fun.
Awesome.
But when I went to college, I wasn't really expecting to be an English major because I come from a family of, sensible people. You need to make a living, My family's more working class. You have to make a living. And, English isn't really good for that. And I didn't know anybody who was a writer. So I didn't realize that was actually a profession that somebody like me could do. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until I met some really wonderful college professors who encouraged me and were like, yeah, hello, they're just normal people like you, that I said, oh, maybe I can do this. And I remember, I think it was in playwriting, even though I was a terrible playwright, that I just thought, I'll bet I could do this. I'll bet I could just go out and maybe get a novel published and write this. It's really the writing that's the most important to me. I love doing it. I love immersing myself. So it was really more in college that I thought of it as even a profession.
So it was all down to your college professors, but it began somewhere with stories. So what stories influenced you?
Oh, all of them. My mom was she is a huge reader, and my dad loved to read as well. And so they're always reading me stories. But I loved, Hans Christian Andersen. I loved Grimm fairy tales. Those were kind of the meat of it right there. Getting into that mythology, that was fun. I love Greek mythology, which is kind of where I took some of those deities from, that is, more human than they should be. But in junior high and high school, I started reading more of the epic fantasy. I love Robin McKinley. I mean, she takes the wonderful fables and she spins them into beauty. The Blue Sword, I still read it at least once a year. And then I got into Tanya Huff and Anne Bishop, and it just spread and spread. Tara K. Harper, Anne McCaffrey, of course, absolute basis. Mercedes Lackey. I could just go on. Lynn Flewelling. They're just so amazing, and I love them. You can tell I tend towards the female epic fantasy writers.
I was just about to comment.
Yes. I remember reading Piers Anthony in junior high. That was kind of meat for me there. But I pretty soon started gravitating a little more towards the more character-centric novels, which tend to be female writers. Not always, but they tend to be. So I usually know when I pick one up, I'm going to really like it. So unless somebody recommends it, I do tend towards female writers.
Well, that's really awesome. So I think you've kind of almost answered my next question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Why fantasy?
It's just so wonderful. I like exploring new worlds. I really like having my old problems from this world put into a new world so I can explore it from a different viewpoint. I think that's one of my favorite things, whether it's prejudice, whether it's women's rights, whether it's cats, all of these things. When you put it someplace else in a new viewpoint, you get so much more. You gain a new perspective, even when you come back to this world. And I think that's what I really like, is just having that perspective change. I know in Buddhism, they talk a lot about your ego and your opinions, and how if you become so set in one path, it's really hard for the ego to listen to somebody else, to listen to a new point of view. And I think sometimes when we take it out of our real world and put it in fantasy, suddenly that context is changed, and we can listen. I can listen to a more conservative viewpoint, I can listen to a very different viewpoint and not get offended, not have to defend my ego. So I think that's what I like about it the most.
You are basically telling me why I like science fiction and fantasy. I'm really passionate about, yeah, the opportunity for opening up the conversation without old prejudices rising to the surface. Yeah.
Right.
I use the example of the Middle East conflict, and you put that in Star Trek, and you've got the Bajorans and the Cardassians, and it's really easy to see what's going on, but and it's not so emotional because you're taking real people and real religion and history, and you're just turning it into, yeah, I think it's fantastic.
Yes.
Now, you've taken a roundabout path to become an author, and I understand, if I understand correctly, you also have a day job, which is, quite common. Most authors seem to need one. What can you tell us about your path?
So I got married and moved from the countryside where I used to live to a more urban place, and simply wasn't able to find a really good job. So I ended up working part-time, going freelance and that. And during that time, I started writing. It was called Sand Sifters. Now it's Desert Rising. And I wrote that and then shoved it in a drawer. Because I'm very terrified of people hating it, which is something I need to get over. And so I worked politics a little bit, and then a yoga studio moved in very close. I'd done yoga for about 20 years, just off of videos, off and on. But this time I met somebody who had a real passion for it. And she kind of gave me that passion. I learned about the philosophy of yoga. And during this time, I wrote another couple novels, which I also shoved into drawers. You can see where this is going. Yeah, it's difficult to get published if you shove your novels into drawers. It's kind of impossible, really. But I had somebody edit Desert Rising, a friend of mine, and gave some good feedback and started editing that at the same time that I started taking teacher training in yoga. I took teacher training saying that I would never actually teach yoga because I don't like being in front of people, so I'm never going to do it. Graduated from that and immediately took on 7 different teaching jobs because it ended up that I was very good at gentle yoga and meditation, which was a real necessity. There's so much of the hot yoga and the vinyasa flow that gentle is often neglected, and it's very important. So I started that, and I sent Desert Rising out to, I think, 1 agent and 1 publisher, just sent out the query letter, and it got rejected, so I shoved it in a drawer again. And then while I was teaching, a friend told me about the HarperCollins open submission. You don't need an agent. So I sent it out, and I said, okay, great. I've sent it out. Breathe. And then 3 months later, I sent out 2 different novels, and 3 months later got a rejection, and thought, oh, that's it. I was never meant to be a novelist, had the whole ego going. And we bought the yoga studio that inspired me to become a teacher because the lady needed to go back and actually make some money. And it wasn't. And we knew that going in. So I became the owner of Studio Yoga and taught, ran the studio, all of that stuff. And then about a year ago, I got the email from HarperCollins saying, oh, you were accepted after all. So that was a big day. And that was about the same time that I think 4 of my teachers told me that they couldn't come back. So I had to write a second novel. I had to start editing, figure out contracts, all that exciting stuff at the same time as teaching more classes and running the studio. So it's been quite a journey. I've been very happy that yoga has been there for me. Otherwise, I think I would be, I don't know, maybe under the bed hiding at this point.
How does yoga help you writing?
I'm kind of a nervous person. I try not to be. You should see my mother, one of those. And it helps calm me. When I meditate, when I do, and yoga is a form of moving meditation. If your mind can't be silent, doing yoga can get it there. So I can get all of those negative voices out of my head, those ones that make me throw the manuscript into the drawer and never look at it again because it's not good enough. All those things that say, you're not good enough. You'll never be good enough. Nobody will ever love you if you publish this novel. All of those insecurities tend to well up in me. I have depression, and this calms that down. It lets me see that, hey, you're perfectly fine exactly as you are. If you never get a novel published, if people don't know your name, you're a wonderful human being. We are all wonderful human beings. Even that jerk on the corner who's yelling at you is actually a wonderful human being inside, if you can see it, if you can dig down. And it helps me dig down. It used to be I'd sit down to write and there'd be 1,000 different voices going in my head. Oh, well, you didn't do the laundry today. Look, there's a dishwasher. It needs filled. The cats need you. You can't write. So you have all those monkey mind. Your mind, I think I read that you have 70,000 thoughts a day, which breaks down to about 37 to 45 a minute. That's a lot of thoughts. And trying to get a novel written with all those thoughts going through your brain can be difficult. It's that focus. And yoga helps calm that down to maybe 20 thoughts a minute so that I can get into the writing immediately, find that creative well, and just go. Get with the characters, move with them, and breathe.
Well, you've sold me. Personally, I mean, I love yoga, but I haven't done it lately. But now I'm thinking, oh, maybe I should.
Yeah, you can always go back. That's the wonderful thing about yoga. You can just go back and do 15 minutes of it. It's good stuff. Even
Yeah.
just breathing.
Yes, 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 breathe. You're about to attend the Chicago Comic and Entertainment Expo. Will this be your first time?
Yes, it's my first time at any Comic Con, so I'm expecting a visual feast. Like I said, I'm kind of a recluse on the hill, so this could be a little overwhelming. I'm looking forward to breathing quietly a lot, and just enjoying the menagerie. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Take a camera. You will want to take photos of the costumes. They are
Oh,
awesome.
oh, it's going to be great. And I'm on with such amazing writers too. It's a little intimidating.
Mm.
That's when I start breathing and say, okay, you are wonderful inside, Kelley. You're just as good as Peter Brett, Naomi Novik, and Patrick Rothfuss.
Are they actually on the panel?
Yes, they're on the panel.
You're on a panel with them.
Yes, I'm on.
Oh,
Hey, don't intimidate me more.
oh no, I just want to be there. I'd love to see that panel. That would be awesome.
Yes, I've read at least the first of each of their novels at this point, and I'm thinking, wow. I'm going to
Yes.
be too starstruck to say anything.
Oh, but this is the ideal way to launch your book, though. This is really good. Have you attended any other conventions?
No, I haven't. Yeah, I think my last 3-day thing that I've attended was a silent Buddhist retreat, and that's going to be a little different than this.
Just a bit.
A little
Just a
bit,
bit.
yeah.
Okay, so well, one of my questions, which I'm assuming the answer is no, is have you seen anyone cosplaying your characters yet? But
No, I have not.
it will come. It will come. Ah, okay. Well, in terms of writing and, broader life, what's coming next?
Well, the paperback will be out May 26th. I'm very excited to actually have my grubby little hands on it. That'll be a lot of fun. Then The Obsidian Temple, which is the sequel, is coming out July 21st, I believe. And then the third novel will actually come out in about a year. So they put them out pretty quickly with the digital first so that you don't have to wait too long to get your hands on the sequel.
Yeah, now we were discussing earlier that this is going to be possibly, well, it is part of a new trend where publishers are releasing the electronic version first and then the paper version. So, is there any story behind that, or is this just the new thing?
I think Tor might be having a program like this as well. I know HarperCollins started this with their romance section, and I think they moved to mysteries. They found it a really nice way of getting new writers out there, and now they've moved to the Voyager, the science fiction and fantasy, and it's just been fascinating to me. I've met some of the other, well, I've met online some of the other Voyager Impulse people, and it's been a lot of fun getting to know each other. I'll actually be able to visually meet them at C2E2, which I'm really excited about.
Right. Well, I mean, that just sounds amazing. It'd be lovely to hear some more from you about, about what happens. Um, Cover of your book. Would you like to show us the cover?
There it is.
Now,
It has
that's not
midnight
looking
and
quite
soup.
bookish. Would you like to show us the back?
The back is just a postcard. Unfortunately, I don't have my hands on the physical copy yet, so I can't wait to. That's going to be very exciting.
Because it gets published in paper form in about a month.
Yes, May 26th, from what I've heard from Amazon. So,
Wow,
which is
well,
because my mom still has not quite figured out the Kindle versions. We got her a Kindle, and she uses it to look up the names of people, and then she goes to the library and gets them out. So she wants a physical copy of it.
well, I can understand that. And I know a lot of people who they will have an electronic copy and that will be their reading copy. And if they really love something, they have to have paper for the shelf, but they probably won't read the paper. It's the artifact. And if they have the opportunity, they get it signed.
Hopefully, I'll be able to sign it. That's going to be exciting too. It's very different. People have asked, I've shown off these postcards and they've asked me for my signature. And I keep thinking, but I'm just me. Why would you want my signature? So it's a very different realm, coming into kind of a public realm when you are usually a private person. You're like, why do you think I'm special? I'm just a normal human being who wrote a book.
Well, it's a big thing. Trust me, I have glass doors on a bookshelf and autograph books going there. So will you be taking like covers of the books and signing them for people?
Yes, I will. That's why I printed them off, just so I'll have something to sign for people to remind them, oh, I'm the person who was on the panel and I hope you enjoy it. So, yes, I will have those there and I will be there to sign them, I guess, right after the panel.
Sounds exciting. Okay, so CJ historically, CJ is one of my reviewers. She historically asks the insane question, and she'd like to know who would win versus Spider-Man versus the Hulk.
Hmm. My money's on Spider-Man.
And why's that?
He's smart, he's little, and he's fast. I think he can run circles around the Hulk. I think it would be a very difficult battle, and I really hope that they would never actually come to that, just because we need them both on our side at this point. But, I'm kind of the small, wiry one. I can do the yoga poses and that. So my money's always on the small, wiry one, because I like to think that the little guy is going to, defeat the big guy, David Goliath, that sort of thing. So that's why. It's more the underdog thing. He looks like the underdog, so I'm going with him.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for talking to Dark Matter.
Well, thank you so much for this interview and my first time on Skype.
Awesome.